Hello and welcome to this very special Full-Time Devils video where we are live and we are going to try and predict, well the guys are anyway, which players start versus West Ham on the very first day of the season in August. We've got Dave, Paul and Adam, and we're going to start with the goalkeeper one at a time, guys. Who will be in goal for the first day of the season? It doesn't matter who goes first because you can repeat, you can say whatever you want. So Dave, you can go first.
I think David De Gea. I think he stays at Manchester United. I think that the money going around for other players means that David De Gea is unattainable in a way for Real Madrid. You know, it'd be costing them 150 million quid. If Pickford's 30 million pound, David De Gea is the finished article. You know, you're thinking 5 times the value. So I think David De Gea stays. What he's done this season, he's been good. He's not been at his best. I don't think he was good as his last season under Louis van Gaal, where he saved United about 20 odd points in the Premier League. But in terms of clean sheets, ranked 3rd in the Premier League and 5th in terms of his save percentage. So he's had a good season, but it is about him declaring that he wants to stay at Manchester United and then continuing his career. And I fully expect him to be between the sticks against West Ham.
Okay, Paul?
Yeah, pretty similar really. Not so much because Real Madrid can't afford the money, because I think we might be just about to give them a massive chunk of cash, which they could then give us back. But just because the political pressure on Madrid would have to be pretty serious at the moment. And given that they've just won back-to-back Champions Leagues and for the first time in a long time a La Liga and Champions League double, their pressing need to improve is relatively minimal. So, and you know, they inherently prefer attacking signings to defensive signings. Although I think De Gea is a bit different. He would be a kind of de Galactico. But anyway, I very, very much hope all the noises coming out of both camps, De Gea's camp and United's camp at the moment, seem to be that he's staying, and very much hope that's the case. And obviously, if he's here and fit, he starts.
Okay, Adam.
I've gone with David De Gea as well.
Clean sweep.
Look, at the end of this last season, I was kind of thought we wouldn't see him again at Man United this season. But the way the summer started, with Real Madrid looking like they're targeting someone like Kylian Mbappe over signing David De Gea. When you hear about the figures that were bandied about for potential David De Gea making the move to Real Madrid, and you see 60-odd million quid, and I think it would have been a world record for a goalkeeper. But even when you look beyond that, it's in this market that's just not enough money. And if Real Madrid can't cough up over 80 million for him, then there's no point Manchester United selling him. It doesn't look like he's going to force his way out of the club. I don't think there's any reason for him to do that. And it just looks like he could make that move at any given time. Next season, the season after. He could make that move at any time. I don't think there's any rush for him. He's got Champions League football next season. We've got a team, hopefully, that will be built into a team that can challenge for the league. So I think Dave will stay, and he'll be in between the sticks against West Ham.
If Dave stays, does Romero play and do the Champions League?
No,
it's a great question.
You think he leaves,
Adam? It's a great question.
You don't drop David De Gea for the Champions League, sorry.
So what happens with Romero? Does he hang around or is he gone?
He'll probably want to leave him. And then fair play to him.
Okay, well, we'll see what happens. Go on, Paul.
The thing about the Romero De Gea thing in the Champions League is, like, I've heard a lot of people say exactly what Adam's just said, which is you don't drop De Gea for the Champions League. But Mourinho dropped De Gea. I mean, I know I have a broken record on this. Mourinho dropped De Gea for the Europa League final, on which absolutely everything rested. So, like, I understand the logic that says, well, you don't drop De Gea for the Champions League, but he was prepared. Do we just think that's because he thought that Romero was up to the level of quality United would match in the Europa League, and he wouldn't be up to the level of quality in terms of strikers and stuff that you come up against in the Champions League? Maybe that argument makes sense. But in terms of trusting Romero in important games, I think he's seen that he will do it. The one wrinkle in this is Joel Pereira. I think maybe he'd be more desperate to keep Romero if it wasn't for Joel Pereira, who I think Mourinho might perceive as ready to be United's second choice keeper.
And that's why I think Romero should move on, because he obviously rejected moves in January. He's stayed at Manchester United hoping to become number one if Dave leaves. If Dave doesn't leave, there's no reason for him to hang around. I don't think there'd be no hard feelings if we did let him go. We got Joel Pereira that needs to come through. Hopefully he can get like League Cup and FA Cup games. But in the Champions League, I just think it'd be mad not to play David De Gea, because if something goes wrong, you can always look back and say, oh, why weren't you playing your best goalkeeper? And it's not look, Romero's great, but David De Gea's the best in the world. That simple.
Okay, fair enough. Right, well, let's talk about the defence. Dave, you've been quiet for a little bit. What is happening with your defence against West Ham? Lindelof is about to sign, has signed. It's all fallen apart. Anything can happen at this point. It looks like he is on the verge of signing. So are you putting him straight in? Who are you pairing him with? Is anybody else new there? What are you thinking?
I reckon Lindelof comes straight in. I think he's a fantastic defender, but I think I'd go with a back four, not a back three. I don't think Mourinho's going to play a back three really this season. I think that was just used because the defenders weren't at the right quality to play a back two. So to go up, against opponents directly when he did that extra cover at the back, you think in the games against, Eden Hazard, the games against, Sanchez, we needed extra defenders in there. So I think he will stick with the back four. I think Valencia is a 100% starter at right back. Potentially will be the captain next season. We saw him taking the armband for the Europa League final. In terms of what he's done this season, he's been fantastic. Properly convert into a fullback under Mourinho. There were aspects of his game that I worried about playing at fullback. People playing the ball over the top, him being out of position. But this season, he's been absolutely brilliant. And going forward is where he really creates the problem for opposition. In terms of United, the attack locked down that left-hand side with 39% of their attacks going down there. And most of the time, it's just Valencia on the right wing. And if Paul Pogba can use that long pass, the switcher play a lot faster. To Antonio Valencia, it's going to create more, opportunities for the strikers and the attackers. But he's been fantastic. Only Kieran Trippier's got more assists as a defender in 2017. So more Antonio Valencia, 100%. In terms of the two centre backs, Lindelof does come in. In terms of what he is as a player, he's a very, very exciting young prospect. He's 22 years old, and he has all the attributes to be one of the best sort of cover defenders in the Premier League. What cover I mean by cover is sort of you've got Eric Bailly who being more aggressive, who play more like a Nemanja Vidic, and then in a way Lindelof is going to be playing the Rio Ferdinand type role, sitting back, using his pace to cover. I think that's one of his biggest strengths is how quick he is. I was watching a game yesterday, Champions League, Benfica versus Dortmund, as you do on a quiet Tuesday afternoon. But in terms of that, he was covering Ousmane Dembele's runs in behind, and he was keeping up with him. If you watched the France-England game recently, you saw how quick he was against Kyle Walker. So that's how fast he is, but also composed on the ball, brilliant on the ball, a good reader. He has his weaknesses, but 22 years old, he'll sort of iron those out under Mourinho. In terms of left back, I kind of feel that Darmian's going to start. I think in the last few months of the season, he got Mourinho's trust in terms of playing as a defensive fullback instead of an attacking fullback. Kind of makes sense in the system. If Valencia's going to push on, we need that cover in there, and Darmian could be the perfect guy there. Thought he was fantastic in the Europa League final up against Traore, who's been one of Ajax's best attacking players. So why not more Darmian playing the sort of Cesar Azpilicueta sort of defensive left back, and that's my back four.
Okay, Paul, what are you doing?
I'm slightly surprised because I thought maybe that I'd be the only one who picked Darmian at left back, but basically all four positions the same. I think the reason that we're going to see the centre back partnership of Bailly and Lindelof is assuming that both are fit, is you have to assume that Lindelof's come, given the investment, we don't know the final figure or whatever, but given the level of investment, you'd imagine he's come to be a starter. Marcus Rocco was obviously excellent for large swathes of last season, but generally Mourinho played him as a partner for Eric Bailly rather than with anyone else. As a partner for Phil Jones rather than as a partner for Eric Bailly. So I guess if Bailly starts, Lindelof starts, and that'll be fun to see. The reason I went for Darmian at left back is just there's three things really. One, I think most of us would want Luke Shaw to play there, but there's been no noises out of either camp. I mean, maybe come pre-season, him and Mourinho will sit down and get on the same page. But two, it's about tactics. It's about the fact that Mourinho wants what at the Carrick testimonial, it's only a testimonial, so you can't read anything into it. But it was really funny watching Fergie on the touchline and both fullbacks bombing on, leaving Nemanja and Rio on their own at their heart of defence. It's like, it just doesn't happen ever under Mourinho. It's one goes, one stays, and normally it's Valencia goes, the guy on the left stays, which makes Darmian a really logical choice there. It does create this big imbalance in our attacking play, but it seems like Mourinho is happy enough to have that imbalance, let the talented forwards deal with that. And what he gains for that sacrifice is defensive stability, which obviously Mourinho loves. So almost a bit of a disappointing pick at left back, but I kind of agree with Dave. I think it's going to be Darmian.
Adam, do you see things the same way? Oh, Dave, we'll get right into the season of Luke Shaw prospects, but let's see what Adam has to say first.
Oh, shut up then, Dave.
Bullying again, are you, Mac?
I love a good bully out of here. Right, I do think the guys are right. Now, that's what my head was saying as well. But I went with my heart and I put Valencia, Bay, Lindelof, and Luke Shaw. I just hope that Luke Shaw has a decent summer. To be honest, he needs something to go for him. He needs a run in the team, even if it's in pre-season. Because I think playing in America in the heat, if he can put a couple of good performances in and show his levels of fitness to Jose Mourinho and show all that side of his game as well. And tactically, he'll need to improve, I think. But I'd like to see him given an opportunity there. It doesn't look like he's going to leave Manchester United. Look, I think Darmian's great. I know there were a few question marks over him, whether he was going to leave or not. But I think towards the tail end of the season, he's probably earned himself another season at Manchester United. But I'd like to see Luke Shaw play there. Daley Blind's also an option. Daley Blind is overlooked so much by Manchester United fans and football fans in general. And I'm glad there's no talk about him leaving, because keeping him at the club, I think, is crucial. He has turned into a utility player, but I think his intelligence on the ball, his intelligence with reading of the game, he always provides a good option at left back. But I went with Luke Shaw, heart over head.
Okay, do you think, guys, the fact that we haven't been linked really to any left backs, the fact that it doesn't sound like Luke Shaw will be leaving, given everything that happened last season and Mourinho's comments about him, would that not suggest that perhaps he's planning big on Luke Shaw? Otherwise, why not just get rid of him now?
I think Manchester United need to think about it. I don't think it's about a Mourinho decision. I think we've seen too many players go that potentially shouldn't have gone. You think in Michael Keane is probably the biggest example of that. Didn't fit into Louis van Gaal's philosophy, ball playing, didn't suit playing in a back three against MK Dons and got sold to Burnley. And now he looks like a brilliant player that could play under Mourinho, similar defending a deep back four, would be perfect, dealing with crosses. So it's more about the club making this decision now on Luke Shaw, that keeping him around, whether Mourinho wants him or not. It's more a club decision than a Mourinho decision, because if you're thinking long term, Luke Shaw will be one of the best left full backs in world football. There's no doubt about that in terms of his talent. It's just getting that run of games, just getting that time. And if Darmian is the first choice this season, a loan move for Luke Shaw in the Premier League, maybe that's not the worst option.
The thing is, though, the problem with looking at the club to make football decisions is there's no one at the club in the hierarchy qualified to do it. That United don't have a director of football. They have a bunch of bankers running things on the executive side. There are non-executive directors with masses of football experience, but do we really think Alex Ferguson's got a say in the kind of decisions that are made at this level? Does Woodward talk to Ferguson about this stuff? I don't know. I don't think we have a sense of whether that's the case or not, and certainly we don't have any evidence that it is. So that's why the club lurches from summer to summer and manager to manager without a coherent plan, which is a big problem, because the whole structure of the club was geared up to have a despotic ruler at the top of everything who makes all the decisions. And then so inevitably when he goes, there are a lot of irons in the fire. So that kind of coherent long-term thinking that goes beyond manager to manager, there aren't too many people equipped to make that. The other thing about left back is there are a lot of options. Cameron Borthwick-Jackson had a bad loan spell, but looked really impressive in his first season. And even if we had a different manager, this might be a lot more likely. But Demi Mitchell, he's done so well since he switched back there in the reserves, and he was superb against Crystal Palace. So anyway,
that's a very good point. Adam, anything you want to say?
One thing on Michael Keane Dave was talking about Michael Keane, and I think Michael Keane's been fantastic for Burnley. But I think it's always easy to look back and say, what if we can... He might not have turned into the player that he is now. Mm-hmm. The reason he's playing at the level he's playing now is because he's had those years at Burnley. He's had that first-team football. He wouldn't have got that at Manchester United over the last couple of years. And maybe if we would have let Smalling go 2 or 3 for someone like Everton, and we would have been saying, maybe we should have kept Chris Smalling. Yeah. I think it's always easy to look back.
Then you insert a buyback. That's where the business is bad. The business is not there because United haven't got a buyback in that contract, which is the issue.
I'm going to interrupt because I'm going to read you some comments from the people that are watching currently. So, Witness 1987 says no keeper is worth more than 70 million.
Not in 2017. That's
rubbish.
Not true anymore.
MEC 357 says De Gea will stay, but Nasir says David De Gea should come and speak. He's leaving us in the dark.
Yeah, I agree with that. 100%.
I agree with that.
Statement.
I guess
now.
I guess they don't speak necessarily through avert public statements because their negotiating positions are so affected by that.
Yeah.
But the kind of leaks and little noises here and there that come out from the players is the kind of equivalent for them speaking. It would be lovely if we lived in a world where clubs and players could speak honestly about these things. It'd make reading the tea leaves of transfer season a lot easier.
Well, Dave, if you're watching...
It's not like he's running around saying only God knows, is it?
Well, no, that's true. If he is watching, though, David Hay, if you are watching and you'd like to make any kind of statement, you're always welcome on Full Time Devils. So MDV Gaming HD has an opinion on the whole Romero De Gea Cup final situation, saying Mourinho only dropped De Gea for Romero because he dropped Romero for De Gea in the League Cup final. Does that make any sense to anybody?
Oh, makes a bit of sense.
Well, it happened, but is that reason enough to...
I think the thing that... The difference is that Romero played in the quarterfinals and the semi-finals of the Europa League, so it was
played
clear
well.
that he was the Europa League goalkeeper, even though Mourinho was asked that overtly and denied it. But you know.
Now, a few people have been agreeing with you, Paul. Matto says we need Cameron Borthwick-Jackson back at left back, and also the same guy who said the one about De Gea and Romero. What about Dimitri Mitchell? So it's all happening. And JC. No says, love your stats. Presumably that's you, Dave. And Jack Taylor wants to know, Dave, in the comments, is that the real you?
Oh, yeah, it's me. I'm in there.
Okay, and now as we move on to the midfield, I'm going to read you one last comment, which is from Sham AB, that says, Fabinho ain't coming, lads.
Oh, that's a shame.
If any of you have put him in midfield, it's not happening. Sham's just told us. Dave, what is your midfield?
Well, my midfield...
Is Shams Fabinho's agent?
Might be.
Maybe we've got a sweet talk him in the comments, Matt. You better get in there. But in terms of my midfield, of course, Fabinho is the first choice for a signing for a defensive midfielder. I think he's probably top 3 in the world. Casemiro's number 1, I'd say, but he's been brilliant for Monaco this season. How he holds that midfield pretty much on his own with the attacking play. The 2 wing-backs do go forward. Bakayoko does join the attack. You've got the 2 wide players that come inside, the 2 strikers. It's pretty much Fabinho and the 2 centre-backs to deal with the counters, and he's so good at covering that space. I think that's the thing that I look so much at his ability is be able to cover at right back, cover at left back. You know, with United potentially pushing on with both fullbacks, which maybe they need to do this season if they are going to play a 4-3-3. It'll be perfect for Fabinho to sit in there. In terms of his stats in for Monaco this season in Liga, obviously they won the title. He completed the most passes for them, and also won the most tackles. But it's not, you know, ball-breaking passes. It's simple passes to the attackers. It's getting the ball to the right person. You know, getting it to Bernardo Silva, getting it to Thomas Lemar, getting it to Mbappe's feet. And it's simple. And that's what he could do with Pogba. That's what he could do with Herrera, who I think should both play ahead of him. If Fabinho comes and Griezmann doesn't come, it's a 3-man midfield for me. Herrera's in there. You know, United's best player this season, the most complete central midfielder in the Premier League. Most tackles, most interceptions at Manchester United, the second most passes, the joint most assists. He's done it all. His job on, Eden Hazard was unbelievable. A great man-to-man job. I think the comments from Mourinho as well, talking about how much of a smart player he is. If you haven't read them, it was about the Europa League final, how he pretty much told Mkhitaryan to get into the penalty area. It wasn't because he thought that Mkhitaryan could score. It was because Mkhitaryan was on a yellow card and he felt that Herrera could deal with the counter-attack a bit better than a player that was on a yellow card. Tactically very smart, tactically perfect. Herrera is 100% in there. And of course, Paul Pogba, who, the media now have turned around because of one performance against England in the international friendly. Oh, wait, this guy's actually quite good at football. Not the fact that he's been good for United this season and he was one of the best midfielders in world football for Juventus the season before. Just one of these things where, come on, watch a bit more football. Paul Pogba is an absolute genius and he tore the Europa League apart. He carried United to that final, was absolutely brilliant. Most passes in that competition, most passes in the final third, scored 3 goals from central midfield, which was a joint most. Was just brilliant. And if we got more of that Paul Pogba, we're laughing. We've got a 3-man midfield there that is capable of winning the Premier League title. So
just to be clear, you're starting Fabinho in the assumption that he will sign?
There's reports going around at the moment. Obviously, they can't be confirmed or denied that he's on holiday for 2 weeks and then potentially he'll come back and he'll sign for Manchester United. Mourinho gave him his debut at Real Madrid. You've got to remember that. So his introduction to European football was given by Mourinho. Hopefully, they've still got an understanding. Fabinho's talked about how Man United is a big club that he'd like to play for. You know, I'm linking the dots and crossing the T's, and if United can get him, they've got one of the best DMs in world football.
Okay, Paul.
I just want to sing the praises of Statman Dave's marvellous #Pogbaganda. This is what we like. Paul Pogba is such an outstanding football. All pro-Pogba propaganda should be heartily encouraged. Anyway, my midfield is annoyingly exactly the same as Dave's. This is really frustrating. I went.
Paul, mate. Do you want to stop copying me?
Listen, I've got an email that I sent to. I've written an article about this for Bleach Report. I sent this 2 days ago.
When we swap round, Paul, you can go first for the attackers.
Okay. If I'd picked this team today rather than 2 days ago when I actually did pick this team, I'm not sure I would have had Fabinho in there because the noises went from, this is looking exciting, to Mourinho's not interested in him at all. Now, hopefully that's just a negotiating position, and in the end this is a transfer that's done. But in the interest of full disclosure, I must say that a lot of my excitement about Fabinho coming is just having talked to Dave a couple of times about Fabinho, because whenever you hear Dave talk about him, you're like, he sounds good, doesn't he? I don't watch a great deal of League A, and I kind of boycotted the Champions League for most of last season because it was too upsetting to watch. But anyway, Herrera and Pogba, that's a complete no-brainer. Herrera, United's player of the season last season for sure. One of only 2 realistic contenders for that. And Pogba just next level outstanding. I mean, in a way, you kind of hope this prediction doesn't come back to bite you, but everything appears to be set for Pogba to erect the Arc of Triumph for this season and go on to have an absolute blinder.
Cool. Right. Adam, do you have a different set of players for us?
Yeah. By the way, I was kind of against Fabinho signing because I thought, what's the point in signing someone that's going to expect to start at right back or central DM, and then we've got other players that can play them. But I have come round to the idea of it over the last couple of weeks, and I do like Fabinho anyway. I just felt like, is there a spot in the team for him at that point? But having said that, I've gone with Herrera and Pogba in the midfield. I gambled on us getting a Premier League home game, so that we're more likely to play a 4-2-3-1 than play a 4-3-3. And luckily, we got West Ham at home first. And I've gone with Herrera and Pogba because I don't think every new signing, Fabinho could be on the bench, come on as a sub or whatever if he did sign. I don't think every single new signing will start in the first Premier League game. Whoa, what was that?
That was me, sorry.
Jesus. Are you all right, Sam?
Everything's okay, don't worry. Continue as normal.
All right. Yeah, so I think if we did sign 4 players, I don't think every single one of them would start in the first league game of the season. So I went with Herrera and Pogba, just hedging my bets a little bit, and stuck with that.
Okay, well, great news. Sham AB's been back on, says, I am Fabinho's agent. So, it's off, guys. He said,
welcome Fabinho.
Well, he said it's not happening.
Oh, no.
Yeah. King Farid says Fellaini should start.
I think Fellaini will start certain games. I think that he's a perfect weapon. What we saw against Ajax, a perfect weapon in certain games. If you want to play the ball to him, why not? If you're going to bypass the midfield, why not play Fellaini as an attacking midfielder? I think it's the defensive midfielder that you're going to replace if you sign a Fabinho. We won't have to see Marouane Fellaini play there and have that, not as good ability on the ball and so forth. So I think Fellaini will play more of an attacking midfielder, more of a number 10 this season, which will be exciting.
So those in the comments, you're doing excellent. Dave, come on now. Gents Tech, Bakayoko. Didn't put a question mark, but I assume maybe Bakayoko ahead of Fabinho.
Bakayoko.
What do you think?
Well, Bakayoko's more of their link man, more of the guy that was getting box to box. I'd say he's a little bit more Paul Pogba-esque than Fabinho-esque, that's the pure destroyer, the pure defensive midfielder. So it's more of what you want to do with Paul Pogba. If you want to play Paul Pogba sitting in front of the defence as the single pivot in a 3-man midfield, Bakayoko's the perfect guy to play ahead of him. But if you want to play Pogba a bit further up the pitch, he's not he hasn't played that role for Monaco. Not that he couldn't do it, that he hadn't played that for France at youth level or so forth, but it's just not how he's played in arguably his best football of his career, is playing as being a bit more aggressive. So Fabinho's just a better fit for United right now than Bakayoko, but Bakayoko is a wonderful footballer.
Okay, last one for the minute from Jonathan Jacobson. Are you guys worried about Barcelona and Ander Herrera and the link there now because of their new manager? Do you have any concerns about Ander?
No. Ander's not going nowhere. We all know this.
Was that just because you want that to be true?
No, because he told me.
I did.
Go on speed dial, right, Mac?
No, he told Sam. You were there. He told me he's not going nowhere.
Well, that was a while ago, though.
Yeah, but he said forever.
I guess he'll never leave then.
He may or may not have said forever, but that's what I heard.
Right.
I'm worried about it, but not because I think it's going to happen, just because I would be so very, very upset if it did happen. That it's not to worry about it a little bit.
We'd have to have a helpline for the United fans.
It's one of those
live Herrera helpline on Full-Time Devils.
It feels like one of those things where it seems so possible, despite how much I dislike it to happen. Like
it doesn't.
A former manager of his is now manager of the biggest club in Spain-ish, one of the biggest clubs in world football, whilst they're still, although not so good this season, still riding high as the greatest team of all time, while they still have Messi, Neymar and Suarez, and their midfield has crumbled. Xavi's left, Iniesta's on his last legs, and they need people to run around the middle of the pitch. So for him to just turn and go, well, I trust Ander, I've worked with him before, but bring him in.
But Ander knows, we love him.
Well, I know, no one's questioning that, are they?
And Verratti's going to Barcelona.
It just seems dangerously possible. I'm not even sure Ander would want to go. I doubt it.
Nah, he doesn't want to go.
He loves the rain.
Just look at him.
Okay, right, Paul, I promised you, so here you go.
Pig in shit.
Oh, Adam. Paul, you can go first. Your attack.
A three-man attack of Henrik Mkhitaryan, Alvaro Morata, and Marcus Rashford.
Morata.
Okay. So we've picked the exact same team, though. This is a bit of a problem. All right. To give a bit of logic behind the decisions, I mean, all of this is wildly speculative. Of course it is. What Adam said about new signings not always starting is a very salient point. The reason I've picked the three new signings to start is I think the Fabinho one's a bit of going out on a limb, but they would be, to me, like the kind of spine new signings that you do start straight away because you do build the team around them. And I think if Morata comes for big money in advance of pre-season, I think we'll see him leading the line for United. And I'm no transfer market expert by any stretch of the imagination, but having looked at all the stuff, it would seem at least reasonably likely that this is going to happen. That doesn't mean it is, but this doesn't seem like a nonsense transfer, does it?
It's no Griezmann 2.0.
Yeah, well, the thing about Griezmann is I think that one was done. That this is what it looks like, is that really was going to happen until Atletico got a transfer ban. I'm still not over that. That's not quite as upsetting as Ander Herrera leaving for Barcelona, but it is close. The reason for picking Mkhitaryan on the left is because on the right, is I think Mourinho needs to start building Mkhitaryan into the DNA of the side right from the beginning. He needs to make it really clear to the Armenian that he's incredibly important to him. Actually, that's what happened at Dortmund. His first season at Dortmund had some peaks, but plenty of troughs too. It was his second season at Dortmund where he really became embedded into the side and became the kind of central creative hub of that team. So if something like that happens this season and we see more of the highs and fewer of the lows that we saw last season, that would be wonderful. And there's got to be a place in this team for Marcus Rashford. Now, I don't actually think that should be on the left. I think we should be building the creative forces around Rashford and making him our number 9. But it's pretty clear that Mourinho doesn't think that. So in that case, much as I'd like to see Anthony Martial on the left, much as this team upsets me a little bit because there's no room for Juan Mata in it, who could play on the right. Mkhitaryan could play on the left even. But there are downsides. There are complex problems to be solved here. But I think you have to put Rashford in this team. He's the kind of he's not the talisman of the team in an Ibrahimovic kind of way, but he is kind of the spiritual heart of the team. He's the young local lad that represents that facet of Manchester United's culture, which Mourinho knows politically he can't ignore that. It's so important because whatever else is happening, you can say, well, I gave 6 players debuts last season and I played more minutes for teenagers than any other manager in the league. And look, Marcus Rashford made the most appearances for United out of everyone last season. So I think we're going to see Rashford on the left. And what will be fascinating is if we see a lot of Rashford on the left this season, whether he can impress more from that position than he has. Because truthfully, I think I can't draw to mind instantly any of his best performances last season coming on the left. I think almost every really effective game he had was through the middle, but that position looks like it's going to be Morata's.
It is weird, isn't it, how we have this new trend of taking young, brilliant forwards and turning them into left wingers. See Anthony Martial.
It happens a lot, though.
Well, it does, but it seems a shame.
It's just like young centre backs occasionally play a fullback just because it's easier to bed them in.
It's good for development as well. If they're playing if they're playing across the front line, they've played on the left hand side, they've played on the right hand side. I'd say that Rashford should get some time at playing as a number 10 as well this season, because it develops their overall skills. You're thinking Thierry Henry played majority, some of his career on the left wing, on the right wing as a striker. It's just better because then you can become a complete forward. You can do it all. You can cross, you can score, you can create.
He already is that man.
He already is, yeah. But you're still talking development. If you want to continue his development, if you want to continue him to be the best player in the world, you've got to give him those minutes across that front line as a young player. And when he's 23, when he's 24, when he's got a bit more stature about him, every single week he'll play as a number 9 and he'll be the best number 9 in world football. But it is about that development, and you see with a lot of the young best players in world football, they will play a variety of positions. Look at Lionel Messi, whereas he played absolutely everywhere for Barcelona.
Dave, I agree with a lot of what you said. Hang on, but a lot of people keep saying about Thierry Henry, and don't worry, Rashford will be great because Thierry Henry played out wide. Thierry Henry was actually the reverse, because he was a winger who Wenger turned into a number 9. He wasn't like originally a forward who got forced out wide because he couldn't get a place. He was playing out wide.
But I think it's similar, whether
but I know what you mean, the experience of playing across the line.
Yeah, it's just the experience of playing it, and I agree. Mbappe is a similar player to Thierry Henry, who started out wide and now is exploding through the middle. It's a little bit different, as he said, but and again, Rashford played at youth level for United on the right wing, on the left wing. So I think it's just that he is just a versatile forward, and the more he plays, the more minutes he gets, the better, really.
The problem, though,
as well.
He can, but the problem is, I don't think it's bad for Rashford that he plays on the left. I think it's bad for United. I think it might be good in the long run for United. I completely agree. He talked about that himself, didn't he, last season? The value he was getting from learning the game from different angles, which is invaluable. But we have a big problem on our left-hand side, because that's where Mourinho's playing his defensive fullback. I mean, Pogba fills some of that gap because he naturally drifts out to that side a lot. But the balance isn't right there. And if Rashford isn't super effective in that position, but we need him on the pitch, which we do, it creates a bit of a really kind of imbalanced attack, which I do think we saw that a bit last season. So, I mean, maybe the solution is at fullback there, if you back him up differently. But yeah.
I think the solution to that problem is twofold. It is consistently playing one player at the left wing, but also it's on that right-hand side. It's stretching the pitch. I think that's a big problem with United, is whoever they play on that right-hand side comes in a little bit too narrow, whether it is Mata or Mkhitaryan. They need to open it up a little bit so United can attack down the right-hand side with 2 players. One of the games that sort of jumps out is against West Ham in the League Cup at home, where we played Mkhitaryan and Valencia on that right-hand side, and Mkhitaryan got 2 assists and Valencia got 1 assist. But they were brilliant. It was sort of reminiscent of David Beckham, Gary Neville, where Beckham sat a bit narrower, where Mkhitaryan sat in the inside right channel, and Valencia was getting on the overlap. And I think it's more about the structure of the attack inside. And if Rashford can be on that left wing, as we said, it will work for a bit. And also, in terms of his best games on that left wing, I think his best game probably came against West Ham. Remember when he was brought on as a sub by Mourinho and changed the game.
Okay, right, Adam, what is your 11? What are your attackers? Because you've got a lot to give us still, 4 players.
Yeah, so I went with Wayne Rooney's impending departure.
Thought you were going to say you went with Wayne Rooney there for a second.
Marouane Fellaini.
I've gone with Mkhitaryan playing in a central position. I don't know why, I just did it. And then I went with Rashford, Martial, and Morata. Martial's my heart again over my head, but I went with Martial. I think I could have easily went with Rashford, Lingard, and Morata, because that sounds like it could be more something you'd expect to see on a team sheet, more than probably Martial, Rashford, and Morata. But I went with Martial on the left, Rashford on the right, Mickey through the middle, and Morata up top. So 2 new signings in my 11. Rashford needs to play. I think we will see him in the number 9 position. We've got so many competitions this season. Marcus Rashford, he doesn't need much rest, does he? He can play 1 week out wide, he can play 1 week through the middle. And I think he will get chances to play in that number 9 position. He has to. But I think in a lot of games, particularly at home, we'll see him out wide, and I don't mind that. But Martial needs to be playing this season. There's talk about Ivan Perisic coming in. Now, Ivan Perisic, he might come in for a lot of money. And I don't mind him coming in because, like I said, we're going to have 60-plus games next season, hopefully. But he's not better than Anthony Martial. And Anthony Martial needs to be starting. he needs to be starting games for Man United, whether that's through the middle as a number 9, which is less likely if we bring in Morata. But he needs to be starting games, because if we don't push Anthony Martial on this season, he will leave and he will do it elsewhere. It's that simple.
Okay. Dave, what is your front three?
I'm going to go with the same as Paul's. Mkhitaryan, Rashford and Morata. I think Mkhitaryan, as Paul mentioned, needs just more minutes. He played, I think it's 1,300 odd minutes in the Premier League, which is nothing compared to, the likes of Eden Hazard, Alexis Sanchez, who were the two best attackers that played nearly 3,000 minutes. It's just one of these things where he needs that consistency in terms of where he was good Europa League, the top goal scorer from midfield in that tournament. He's had his season of adjustment, so it's now the time for Mkhitaryan to step up, and I think it is on that right-hand side where he will become, deadly for United. In terms of Rashford, as we mentioned, the most minutes as a teenager in the Premier League this season. Where I was really impressed was sort of the back end of the season in the Europa League when we needed to win the games. Since the quarterfinals, Rashford was directly involved in 60% of United's goals. So he really contributed massively, and I think he's got Mourinho's trust, and I expect him to start. In terms of Morata, it makes sense if you aren't signing Antoine Griezmann. I think if you sign Antoine Griezmann, someone like a Belotti may be a little bit better, a target man that Griezmann can run off. But if United are playing a 4-3-3, which I expect them to do if Griezmann isn't coming, Morata's probably that better solution, more of a goal scorer, more of a poacher than Belotti's, robust, his ability to hold the ball and stuff. So I think Morata would be a very, very good signing. 20 goals this season in all competitions. He's got the best minutes to goals ratio apart from Lionel Messi in La Liga. I think he'll do well. He's another player that likes to get on the end of crosses, similar to Belotti. Scored 58% of his goals from crosses for Torino. Morata scored 8 of his 20 in all comps from crosses. So it's United's style to get the ball wide and cross it. That's why they're looking at players like Lukaku, like Belotti, like Morata, because they all do well in that situation. So if Morata comes to United, he'll be brilliant. So, I'm happy with that front three.
I really enjoyed if he comes, it'll be brilliant. Great. Got a few more comments for you. So Alexis, says, if Mourinho sells Martial, we are F *****ED'd, which I think could be fooled or fueled. I'm not really sure. But I guess he doesn't think that's a good idea. KSNF UFC says, so where is Perisic then?
Yeah, the one thing that I would really disagree with what Adam said is that we need more players because of the number of games we're going to have this season. I think it's extremely likely we'll have fewer games this season than we had in the season just gone. And we saw that Mourinho's habit is just not to rotate. He doesn't, once he's got a side that he believes in, he rotates when he has to, not when he wants to, most of the time. So actually, Perisic coming in would really worry me in terms of Martial. Look, it'd be lovely if he comes in and he absolutely tears the place up and this looks really foolish. That'd be wonderful. But I don't think Mourinho's going to go, okay, I'm going to play Perisic in this game, Martial in this game, I think Mourinho's going to go, this is my starting 11. I adapt when I absolutely have to.
Yeah.
Maybe, but even the League Cup, Mourinho cares about that so much that he doesn't even really rotate that much in the League Cup. So, that's my take on that.
Think of the squad in terms of you've lost Memphis Depay, you've lost Morgan Schneiderlin, you've lost Bastian Schweinsteiger. So United need to sign a central midfielder for Fabinho, but I also think they need to sign a replacement for Memphis Depay. And if you get in Perisic on a decent whack, Inter Milan need to make some money.
If Rooney's leaving, Zlatan's leaving.
Yeah.
Losing a lot of numbers, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I know I'm kind of like an eternal optimist, and if we fuck up with Martial, even Timothy Fosu mentioned this season, like if he hasn't got a single appearance next to his name by January, he may as well leave. Like, just don't do this, Mourinho. Like,
they're still young players. It's all about like competitiveness. You've seen some of the best stuff this season from Real Madrid because they've got like 2 full 11s of players, and it really pushes them on. And if United want to be competitive and want to get up to that Real Madrid level of winning back-to-back Champions Leagues, they need that depth. So why not have Martial? Why not have Perisic as 2 options on that left wing? 2 slightly different players as well.
That's in an ideal.
Guys, I think it's important that you know that Lee Montague thinks Bakayoko is a poor man's Colton Palmer. So,
that's a name I haven't heard in a long time.
Here's another name, it's been a while since it was about, from Man United 13, Liverpool 0, have fun in Europa, James.
No.
Because that looked absolutely nailed on, and now it seems to have not been nailed on.
it don't seem like we want him. It seems like Real Madrid are just trying to pump up the prices and pump up the bids for him. They need to raise money for Mbappe. Don't believe the hype. Rodriguez, it ain't happening.
The one person that we've hardly mentioned
He's going to sign
in this category is Juan Mata. Because, I mean, I think Juan Mata is the number one reason we don't need James Rodriguez.
Incredibly. Paul, I want you to carry on. I'm just going to point this out so I don't forget to do it later. TDS Panzer says, I like the 4-2-3-1 with Mata at central attacking midfield.
That's what I was going to say about Adam's selection as well, is that I think if it is 4-2-3-1, I think it very well might be Mkhitaryan centrally and Mata on the right, because Mourinho clearly, like, Mata's hardly ever played at number 10 at Man United. It's a very strange thing. But I think even in a 4-3-3, you might well see Mata over Mkhitaryan and then we're talking about like a Rashford Mata situation, which has got all sorts of rhyming potential. But anyway, that's a secondary factor clearly. But yeah, I think he is going to be really important again this season, and I think actually he might be the biggest thing that we've all overlooked in our squad. I think he might be, out of everyone that could be signing and everyone that's already in the squad, the one player that I think would most likely be in the starting 11 that none of us have picked is Juan Mata.
Okay, there's one more name that was down there. Do we expect much from Andres Pereira?
I think we've got to get the transfer through, right, Mac?
Hey!
Say it again.
Killed it. Absolutely killed it. Right, guys, I'll give you 30 seconds each to summarise why, if you can go through it again, whilst your team...
I still don't know what you used that said.
Well, Dave was taking shots at you because we were talking about Pereira. So a second...
Well, Dave always misses when he takes shots at me.
Remind everybody of your team, your formation. I am looking forward to your arguments.
Here's a stat for you. Dave has missed 100% of shots he has taken.
Matt, you didn't even see it. It hurt you so bad that you just didn't even acknowledge it as a shot, mate. You just gutted.
Right, Dave, you've gone first a lot. So Matt, you can go. Paul, you can go first.
Whoa! I never go.
You can go second because your team is different. Listen, it's because your team is different. Otherwise, we'd have to listen to the same team twice, and nobody deserves that. So if we put you in the middle, it's like a nice buffer before we hear the same thing again, but slightly different. So, Paul, you got 30 seconds. Go.
The thing about my team is you can be sure that it's good because Dave picked it. Dave's a smart man. He knows about stuff. He looks at the numbers. He crunches all this stuff. Dave picked it. It must be good. In all seriousness, I think all three of these teams are more than reasonable guesses at a starting 11. I think I used fairly sound logic. The one position I'm really unsure about is Fabinho, but the rest of them I think are pretty sound. I think that Lindelof-Bailly pairing makes sense. I think Morata up front makes sense. The whole thing makes sense.
You're well past your 30 seconds, but it's fine. Right, Adam's going to go, and then Dave is going to go. But before Dave goes, I've just had word from producer Chris that Dave actually emailed in a different team.
I emailed in 2 teams.
So you can't email, Chris. You can't, Dave. You can't just. He's claiming 2 teams. Chris isn't happy. He got presumably the first team, and that's what we've gone with. So what appears on screen is different to what Dave has been saying because Dave has sent 2. This is like earlier on. He was at Real Madrid. Have got 2 teams. That's why they're great. Dave, you can't always have 2 teams. I tell you what, Paul. That's blown your argument because your argument was my team's right because Dave's clever.
No, my team is so right that Dave had to change his wrong team to be as good as right as my team.
Potentially. So whilst Dave considers which is his team, Adam, go.
But what I will tell you, football isn't played on spreadsheets, so count Dave's team out straight away. And
Great logic, Matt. You know, nothing to do with watches, football, like that. Just spreadsheets, mate. Yeah, cool.
Paul.
Good argument, buddy.
Paul's a nice guy, but since when did nice people win votes? I mean, 4.2 million people voted for Theresa May. Donald Trump is the president.
You've gone full Trump. Instead of arguing for your team, you're attacking the other people. That is your approach.
I only picked 2 new signings. That's realistic for you. These like pick Fabinho. Fabinho doesn't even want to come to United.
Adam, your time is up, but I'm stunned that your approach to this football team is good is, Dave just loves stats and Paul's too nice.
Listen,
what a
Jerry
weird
Corbyn
argument.
Just got the largest swing to a political party since Anthony Eden.
Okay. Dave, I don't know what you're going to say, but your first team is going to be what appears on screen. So you got 30 seconds.
My first team was the feeling that if Morata signs, Mourinho wouldn't start 3 players. So I think I went with Rashford through the middle and Anthony Martial on the left, which I think is a perfect team to play in. That's got great balance. My other team with Morata through the middle, if he signs, he comes. He is the starting guy in there. But I'd like to throw out another situation, Sam. If Fabinho isn't signed, we bring in Marouane Fellaini, we play a 4-2-3-1, Herrera, Pogba, Fellaini ahead. That is the start to winning a Premier League title.
You've not really entered into the spirit of the fortune-telling element of this video. The point is that the transfer window isn't open. We haven't actually signed or sold anybody, so we're guessing. That is literally the point of this, Dave. So you can't do 3 teams and goes, well, if that happens, this will happen. But if that happens, this.
You've got to think outside the box.
I know what we should do.
Go on, Adam.
The first preview for the West Ham game, it should be us 4 again. Yeah. And we compare our team.
I imagine that's exactly what producer Chris had in mind, except it would take ages going through all of Dave's various options.
I'm the brave guy, full-time devils, let me tell you.
Okay, so the winner of this video is, well, I think by default has to be Adam, purely because, only because, Paul, I'm afraid the basis of your argument was Dave is a really clever man.
No. But I think
No re-elections. It's already over.
It's a whole parliament situation, right? There's definitely going to be a new election in autumn. I think the whole point is Dave went through he crunched all the numbers in his head. He was like, go with this team, and the one that he came out with at the end of this tortuous process was the correct team.
Now, Paul, I'd agree, except he just gave us a third option. He's like a malfunctioning vending machine, just spitting out Twixes. He doesn't know what's happening. He barely knows what day of the week it is. Oh, there is look, Twixes. Did you know there's one here? That's exciting.
My attempt to form a coalition of chaos with Dave has been a complete disaster.
I think it's probably good for everybody. It does mean we're stuck with Mac, though, and his right-wing views.
Of the change of team here at centre 12:25.
Dave, it's too late. That was far too late. You were way past the cut-off of 12:24. Right, guys, thank you very much. Everybody else who's been watching, let us know which team you would prefer, which team you think will happen, because at this stage, any signing is possible, really, isn't it? So get in the comments, subscribe to Full Time Devils, and try and enjoy the transfer window for what it is.